Does the Hurts leadership convo in any way recolor your perspective of Wentz / his exit?
It does in this sense. All of the stuff that you're hearing right now about, maybe the Eagles aren't wedded to Jalen Hurts, or, he really overstepped going to 95% from what are usually voices in support of the front office, right? The fact that you are not seeing like the organization like batten down the hatches to protect Jalen Hurts, and that they are sort of okay letting this narrative swirl in the wind this offseason. If what happened with Carson Wentz, maybe your franchise quarterback was snoring too much and you decided that you needed to get a divorce. If that happens again, then all of a sudden maybe it's not the quarterback who's the problem.
Sure.
It's the organization who's the problem, who cannot have a healthy relationship with a franchise quarterback.
That's an interesting point, and perhaps the organization would counter and say, "No, the market's the problem," right? And I mean, I think they would say that before they would say the franchise is the problem, even if the franchise is the problem.
The market, how?
Like the Philly market, they might be like, "Oh, this is so tough. You guys can't have anything good, right?" I think the Eagles are a lot of things, but I think they're often not self-aware when it comes to sometimes it's everything or everyone else is the problem, right? I don't know, self-aware. I should say more self-critical, right? But to answer this question, this might seem simplistic. I said a version of this with Carson, and I'll say the same thing with Jalen. When you're winning, that kind of blank look, it's intense.
Sure.
It's driven. When you're losing, it's why isn't he smiling more? You hear the expression in all sports, winning's the best deodorant. It's true. Winning is the best deodorant in sports, right? And I think perception often goes, and I suppose this is a media thing so to kind of say the team will talk about the market, is that sports are often a narrative-driven business, right? And a narrative is often based on whether you win or when you lose. It's easy to craft a narrative when you win. It's easy to craft a narrative when you lose. From the leadership point of it, I don't think the Eagles traded Carson because he was a bad leader, or I don't think it was a matter of being a bad leader, but I don't think Jalen is a bad leader. And I think Jeffrey Lurie said it well at the owners' meetings. Like, Jalen needs to lead with authenticity matters with leadership, right? And I think that leadership can show up in a number of different ways. Jason Kelce led differently than Fletcher Cox led, which was differently than Brian Dawkins led, which was different than how Malcolm Jenkins led. Everyone has different forms.
Just like everybody uses the word consummate differently. It's true. It's that's why Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors.
I suppose so. So I don't think I don't think there's a Hurts leadership problem, but I do think in the topic of being self-aware, I think you can always improve yourself. And when you have a losing streak the way you did, the first thing everyone should do is say, what can I do better, right? What more can I do? I think it's very easy to say that person's the problem, or this is the problem, or I'm okay, we just need to change this. But if everyone collectively says, what can I do better? And with Jalen, there's things on the field he can do better. There's things off the field he can do better. But I don't think there's a macro leadership problem with Jalen Hurts. I think it's more, there was a show on ABC a few years ago called A Million Little Things. Right? Okay. Did you watch that show?
No.
Okay.
I remember you did, though.
Yeah, Joy, did you watch that? No. Yeah. Okay. But I think like in most situations, it's not like one big thing. It's often a bunch of little things.
Well, let me ask you this, and this goes to the market. I am not paying as close attention, obviously, to the situations in 31 other front office or fan bases as the Eagles. Can you think of other places where, like, a quarterback is signed to a long-term deal and there is so much consternation that seems to be had between the quarterback and the front office. Dallas sort of comes to mind, right? Like, will they or won't they pay Dak? But that's because they haven't paid him yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a little bit of that in Seattle before Russell Wilson left.
Sure.
I don't know. Do you feel like the way that stuff is often described in Philadelphia is atypical for the rest of the league?
Good question. Yeah, I think that is the nature of the market. I don't think Trevor Lawrence's comments are being scrutinized to the same degree. But look, I mean, Baker Mayfield, they had this in Cleveland, right?
Sure.
You have this conversation whenever a team with Joe Flacco in Baltimore, for instance, when they drafted Lamar Jackson, this came up. Certainly, there were times at the end in New England. We watched the Brady documentary.
Yeah,
there were things that come up. So yeah,
okay. So this maybe it's not as out there as we think.
Yeah, I think the most underrated thing from a fan perspective is the role human dynamics play in professional sports. Because and I understand this. Often they're kind of viewed as characters. And when we talk about the draft, we talk about all these like measurable characteristics, right? But ultimately, the NFL is like any workplace, and it's actually probably more pronounced because you're dealing with young men, primarily young men, right? There's ego, there's money. It's a lot. It's kind of on steroids, so to speak, from a typical workplace.
Yeah, and sometimes not, so to speak.
Yeah, sometimes not, so to speak, as well.
We all silly like the mayor.